This sustainability series and episode is brought to you by our friends at IMC Logistics, the largest marine drayage company in the nation and a true leader in sustainable supply chain solutions.
IMC is investing in a greener future with zero emission trucks, clean fuel initiatives, and smarter logistics strategies that reduce emissions and improve efficiency without compromising service.
At IMC Logistics, sustainability isn't a slogan, it's a commitment to building a better supply chain for generations to come. Learn more at imcc.com.
Now, let's dive into today's conversation on sustainable innovation in global logistics.
Welcome to Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. I'm Kevin Parkerson.
And I'm Kevin Higgins. Together we bring you over 60 years in combined experience in global logistics.
In each episode, we'll dive into the latest industry trends, share practical tips, celebrate wins, and share stories from the logistics front lines, all while helping businesses optimize their logistics operations.
Today on Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics, we're joined by someone who spent more than 2 decades not just working in global trade, but shaping it. Ken Uriu, Senior Vice President of Business Development at IMC Logistics for the Pacific region, brings a rare depth of experience to the table. From his early days as an account rep with NYK Line to leading import cargo strategy at the Port of Long Beach, and now helping drive the future of drayage and warehousing at IMC, Ken's seen it all from the inside out.
Whether it's intermodal strategy, container movement, or building high-impact partnerships on the U.S. West Coast, Ken has been an instrumental key player in how freight actually flows. If you care about the intersection of port operations, carrier relationships, and real-world logistics on the ground, this conversation's for you. Let's get started.
Hey, Ken, what's up?
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me on board today.
Yeah, man, Good to see you again.
This is going to be great. So Ken, I've known you probably for, I think, maybe a couple of decades, but I've known you for quite some time. But I met you when you were in a different role. Maybe share a little bit with our audience, just real briefly. We went through it a little bit in the introduction, but tell them a little bit about your career, how you got started in logistics, and then maybe, end it with kind of what you're doing today.
Thank you for that, Kevin. By accident, I ended up in the industry. After college, I was back on the family farm in rural Weiser, Idaho. And one of my college buddies said, "Hey, there is a Japanese company moving to Boise, Idaho." And not knowing anything better, but just the sound that Boise was a bigger town for me than Weiser, Idaho, I jumped at the chance and went to work for a company called NYK, which was my beginnings of working in international trade. When I got hired on, one of the things that is a great memory for me was that my grandma, she showed me her ticket of when she came across from Yokohama, Japan to San Francisco on an NYK vessel in the early 1900s.
Really?
And that was really cool to me then. And she said, "Oh, NYK, that brought me here to the United States." And so, I really got into it. And I guess from there, it was meant to be. Working for NYK, I started off in Boise, Idaho, then moved down to Long Beach, California, and eventually out to Secaucus, New Jersey, where NYK had their North American corporate headquarters.
Yep.
And had some great bosses at the time, Mike DiVirgilio, Bill Payne, Greg Tuthill. Those were the guys that, really showed me a lot about moving a container from somewhere in Asia to somewhere in the U.S. And they brought me along. So I spent my formative years at NYK, and my dream job, though, was actually in Hong Kong, and I could not get that job. So I actually asked if I could move back to the West Coast. And when I was at a Port of Long Beach event, I met one of my former customers from Mattel Toys, Don Snyder, and he asked if I would mind working for the port. And so that began a 16-year career from 2005, where I started with the Port of Long Beach. And that was an amazing time of my life. Got to meet some really cool people, and it really expanded my my network of meeting all the beneficial cargo owners from across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Got to travel overseas. Some of the great executive directors I had were Dick Steinke, Chris Lytle, Mario Cordero, Noel Hasagawa. He's not the executive director, but a guy that's very well known in the industry.
Yeah.
And it showed me a lot about working for a port authority and the economic benefits of all this cargo coming into the LA Long Beach to San Pedro Bay port complex. And that was really an eye-opener for me, and just seeing what this means for the community and what the port was trying to do in terms of, hey, you've got to be a good neighbor to the citizens around you. So yes, thank you for all the cargo volume that you're bringing in, but by the way, can you do something about the air quality in LA and Long Beach?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very helpful for me to see how public policy was being introduced and how that could shape the lives of ocean carriers, trucking companies, importers and exporters, and how everyone working together could benefit, the port's growth and also cleaning up the air. About 5 years now ago, COVID was going on, and I think at that time my life really changed quite a bit. We were all working from home, and I was going stir crazy at that time. And at that time, I think Donna Lem, another well-known person in the industry, who I've known for a long time, great friend, great mentor, she said, hey, IMC has started up a company out on the West Coast. They're looking for some assistance. And I went to work for IMC, and specifically Jim Gillis, who is the president of the Pacific region and who's my boss. And it's been, a great 5 years since then. So just great times. I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of cool people in this industry, and from each of them, thank you very much for, imparting wisdom in my life and telling me, and showing me, what it's like to know more about this great industry in which we're all in.
Man, you have had, that's incredible. Were you in Boise at the same time Dave Lyman was?
I was going to ask that. Yep.
Yeah, Dave Lyman was there actually. So we were kind of crisscrossing. So I was, he came to Boise after I had moved to Secaucus, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. I got you. And he ended up going to Hong Kong.
Yes, he did.
And you did not. So we're gonna hold that over Dave's head a little bit.
Yeah, he had a great career with NYK. Still doing a lot of amazing things, and it was good times at NYK. Can't complain about anything that I learned there.
Yeah,
that's a great.
Awesome,
I've never heard that story about your grandmother and her tie to NYK. I love that that story that you told. But so Ken, so what's one thing you've been in the industry, decades? What's one thing about this industry that still surprises you?
People forget that relationships matter. You got to continue to build those relationships, and once they're established, you got to continue to grow those relationships. It's a big industry, but the amount of people are kind of small.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. You keep running into the same people, and it's cool that way.
Yeah.
But, it's mind-boggling to me that, what drives the economies of the world is transportation. And to me, that's really cool.
KP, it's almost like we planted
I
that
started
answer.
to tell
We
everyone
can,
we did
but
not
we
tell
did
him
not
to say that. But,
yeah. That's because that is one of the things that we always talk about is the importance of relationships, because anywhere that I have ever been and have ever gotten to is all because of a relationship with somebody. And man, this industry is, some of my best friends came from this industry, and the people that you meet, and it just, you never know. It's just amazing. So I think that's a great answer. And I really appreciate you talking about that.
Yeah. Kevin, one of the most vivid memories was being in New Jersey on 9/11 and seeing how NYK, even though we were in Secaucus, New Jersey, we had loved ones or family members who were working in the city at that time.
Sure.
And NYK took them in and housed them in a hotel next door to the corporate office.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is mind-boggling that this is happening, that they don't know these people, but they cared enough and to take people in. And having those people from those days, that meant a lot to me.
Yeah, for sure. That's NYK has always been a long relationship with NYK dating back to 94, 95. And so I have a great admiration for them as a company.
Yeah.
So Ken, one of the reasons I'm really excited about having you on today is, we've had many guests, but I think your background, your experience is so comprehensive, meaning you've been on a variety of sides. So you've worked on both sides of the negotiation table, and you talk about relationships. Share a little bit from your perspective, from shipping lines to port authority to drayage. Who's got the toughest job when it comes to negotiations?
Drayage, by far.
And that's the world you're in today. Yeah. Explain your answer as to why.
Well, I think people, they underestimate the importance of the first mile or the last mile of the entire supply chain. It's probably the most important part of getting cargo from point A to point B. And, I always hear from our customers today is like, oh, we've got this ocean carrier throwing out this GRI or general rate increase. And we still need we need to be competitive because our transportation spend hasn't increased. And I'm like, I'm working in California. Costs continue to go up.
Mm-hmm.
One of the sobering things that happened just last week, the largest drayage provider in Oakland,
Saw that.
They went out of business. And in my mind, in my viewpoint, it's because the rate levels that we are being paid today are in the levels of pre-COVID, and we're operating in the 2025 levels. So a plea to all of our customers and supply chain partners is that, it's tough being a trucking company. Our margins are razor thin. And especially here in California, where we've had to invest so much into having the cleanest and greenest equipment available. It's really tough, and we need those margins to be at a healthy level and not be at the rate levels that from 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, like, I haven't done the study in a long time, but I'd be interested to do it again and to know, like, look at a 1995, 1998 rate level, Long Beach, LA to Southgate or Downey or something like that, right? I can tell you that rate in 1995 to 1998 was like $175. And, but the cost of a tractor in 1995, 1997, you still buy a used tractor, and it was, anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000. And we've seen significant increases, double, triple cost on tractors because of the emissions regulations that have gone into play. And fuel is significantly higher. So, yeah, I would love to know what that comparison is for the past 30 years and how the rates have changed.
Yeah.
But I feel for you guys in that regard, because it just hasn't grown, I don't think, like it should, in order for you guys to continue to do capital investments like are needed.
Yeah, I think last week's news announcement of this great trucking company up in the Bay Area should be a warning signal to the rest of the industry that
It
if
is.
that company goes out of business, really know who your partners are and
Yeah.
ask them, how do I become a preferred customer, to move your freight? Because we moved the freight during COVID. We never stopped, and COVID was a difficult time, and now we're back at rate levels that really don't justify the cost.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole nother, that could be a whole nother episode, and maybe we do that. We bring you back. I'd love to get you started talking a little bit about being that shipper of choice, and I think that definitely is an important topic and could be, you could be a subject matter expert on that topic for another episode. But let's pivot a little bit to, you talked about the last mile, but let's drill down even more and talk about exports and the export challenge in particular. What shippers are dealing with, kind of set the stage for us. What's the current state of export flows through the West Coast? Here we are sitting mid-July. What's going on? And I know the T word tariffs are going to come up and the implications there, but kind of set the stage for the environment for exporters and the export business today.
For sure. When you're looking at export, you are looking at another commodity that's razor thin margins. Everyone loads in bulk, which means they load heavy. And that's tough, especially in California when, our GVW is 80,000 pounds in a container, and we can't load heavier than that without, breaking a law. So you're kind of restricted. It's really tough on everyone in the export market right now. I know the exporters on a daily basis are dealing with the changing of the ERD. Cut dates are always changing. You're hearing of equipment, not having equipment in the inland depots. So if you're in the Midwest, those are the rural areas. There isn't any ocean containers out there. So how do you get your product to the rail?
Right.
It's tough all over. And, if given the opportunity and if transportation worked perfectly, the American farmer could feed the rest of the world quite easily. If we were to have that open up market, that would be a very cool thing for the farmers to have transportation working smoothly. And right now I feel for a lot of the exporters around the nation that have issues with ERDs, uncertainty with tariffs, and with uncertainties of not having equipment where they need the equipment the most.
Yeah. So what's the read? Do you have a read on how the exporters are feeling about, as we're getting, again, this is mid-July, as we're getting some intel, some semblance of some of these trade deals that are being made that are helping, are meant to help the exporters. Is it still a wait and see? Are they excited about some that have come out, Indonesia in particular? What's the sentiment? What do you have a pulse on that at all?
It's still, to me, it's a wait and see. It's also you got to watch the value of the dollar versus other currencies. That's a big factor for our exporters here. It's tough when our dollar's high in comparison to everyone else.
Yeah.
So I think the product is there specifically when it comes to ag products. in California, and the rest of the nation. I think the ag is there. When it comes to some of the other like scrap materials, that one's tough because a lot of the scrap materials were going to China, and with some of the tariffs in place or some of the difficulties of moving cargo to some of these other nations, specifically China, it's been tough on some of those exporters that only rely upon China.
Yeah. So from your seat at IMC, what do exporters get wrong, or maybe what do they underestimate when planning for container moves?
The biggest thing again is, you got to have multiple contingency plans. I mean, if your ERD changes, what do you do with the product, and do you have a backup plan for that product to go into storage? If you're a reefer export shipper, refrigerated commodities, knowing that your vendors have reefer plugs to keep those reefers going is also very important. So I guess just having multiple backup plans for when things go south, because normally it's not every day, I would say something, you get thrown a curveball with these exporters on what happens and how they're treated with the ocean carriers and with the marine terminals of getting their product in.
Well, that definitely gets me to the next topic that I think can fall into a contingency or a lever to pull, and that's street turns. Street turning empties. It's a simple concept, but it can be pretty complex. Can you break that concept down? Street turns, for maybe people who might be new to that concept.
Sure. A street turn, well, let's start with an import load. You're taking an import laden container from the port authority to an inland destination. Mm-hmm. And usually you would take that empty right back to the port. In terms of a street turn, instead of taking that empty container back to the port, you find an exporter in the general vicinity of that importer, and you use that empty container to load up with an export going out. So you're eliminating a move, which is better for the environment. You're making things more efficient, and you're providing an ocean carrier with two laden containers, import in, export out laden, mm-hmm. which is two revenue loads. It should be a no-brainer, but it's really tough to make that work.
It is, it is. I said it was a simple concept, but it's got complexities to it, and I know all too well the complexities to it.
Yeah.
But maybe explain a little bit more about some of the biggest operational hurdles or challenges of actually executing street turns. Some of them I know of, systems and driver availability and timing and terminal mm-hmm. constraints and appointments and all of those type things.
Yeah. Wheels.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and more importantly, what IMC is doing, to help with that.
Sure. So first of all, I do want to give kudos to some of the ocean carriers.
Just some of them, not all of them, right?
Some of them, not all of them, but yeah. Some of them. OCL.
I'll give you a list.
Okay. it's a small list of kudos, but like OOCL, O&E, MSC, they continue to work with the trucking community to provide a street turn. Some of the other ocean carriers have introduced platforms to do a street turn, and then they introduce a charge that goes along with that. There's a perfectly free street turn that you can use through the Intermodal Association of North America that doesn't introduce extra costs. And I wish some of the ocean carriers would go back to that way, but now some of the ocean carriers have monetized these street turn platforms, and it's introduced extra costs, which I don't blame them for trying to make more money, but it's also adding more costs to the entire supply chain. And it does make me a little bit angry when, we're giving them a laden export move, which is a money move for them.
Yeah. And I've never seen you angry. I've never seen you angry. So,
I mean, honestly, they should pay somebody for that street turn. Instead of charging somebody for that street turn, they should pay somebody or give them a discount, because they don't have to take that empty back, pull the empty back. It's two moves,
right?
And I'm with you. I'll express my frustration a little bit more vehemently than you are, Ken, because it is, to me, it's like, I know there's a lot of complexities to it, but man, this is one of those things that really should be solved. And we talked to somebody who's got some technology, who's working on doing that. And they were, on a podcast recently, but it's one of those things that can make the supply chain more efficient if people would just get behind this and not create 13 different systems in order for it to happen. But let's figure it out as an industry and come together, because it's a nightmare, and it's been a nightmare for a long time.
Well, yes, sir. Higgins, you're reading my notes, because I was just getting ready to pull you into this and say, okay, this is the part of the episode where Higgins is going to do all the talking now. So where do you see technology helping, or where do you see technology complicating the concept of, or the execution of street turns?
You asking me that question, or Ken?
Both of you. Whoever wants to answer that. I know both of you will have opinions and ideas. So
I'll jump in there, because and Ken knows this more intimately than I do, but you have a lot of complexities in this street turn concept, right? Because it used to be an ocean carrier had their own ocean terminal, had their own chassis, and everything was kind of all one-to-one, right? But now we have vessel sharing agreements and alliances, and they go to 5 different terminals, and you got chassis that belong to Track, DCLI, Milestone, FlexiVan, and sometimes the carrier, sometimes they're IMC chassis, or they belong to somebody else. And then you have appointment systems, all of these various appointment systems, which I know that some of the ports are trying to solve. But to me, whether it's a neutral platform out there that allows for a street turn that coordinates all of that. So we've called this in empty. We're stopping the clock on the container. We're stopping the clock on the chassis. And so it's empty and it's available. Oh, it's eligible for a street turn. Let's go ahead and do this. And so there's ways to solve this, and technology can be used for part of that, but it requires people to look at it holistically and not individually. And everybody's my perception is they're all trying to solve this problem at once for themselves, and it affects a lot of other people. So we kind of have to do things collectively, and whether that's through IANA, the Intermodal Association, or whether that's through the Harbor Trucking Association, or whether that's through somebody else, when we talk to Tyler at Quale, those kinds of things, there's ways to do it. We just need adoption, and we need people behind it in order to solve it. Technology alone won't solve it. We've proven that with chassis. We had chassis reservation systems. We've proven that with, various things. It takes people to get behind it in order to get on board and solve the problem.
And time's up. All right. Now,
Yeah.
and, all right, Ken. And so from IMC Logistics perspective, I don't disagree with what you just said, Higgins. I think there's a lot of good stuff in that. And, but I'd love to get, Ken, your take on what IMC's position and solutioning is available.
I think one of the simplest solutions is to convince everyone in the supply chain to allow the trucking company to use our own private chassis as much as possible. In terms of efficiencies, we're able to dual up an appointment. In other words, bring in an empty or a laden with the same chassis and pull out a load with the same chassis instead of having to match it up with a particular container, the chassis with a particular
That
container.
would make the world, it's such a better place to live if you could do that, right?
Something
Consistency
simple.
everywhere,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things here in Southern California, we've had the pool of pools pop for the longest time. And when it came out, it was definitely needed. We needed chassis. But now the pool of pools is slowly disintegrating. We're down to 2 of the chassis providers, and very shortly we think it'll only be 1. And that's causing some challenges, as now some of the ocean carriers are getting back into having their own chassis. And that makes it very, very complex for us to do an efficient dual transaction at the marine terminals.
Yeah. So Ken, crystal ball time on the episode. And we'll probably have another crystal ball episode on something else, but maybe not where you want it to go, but where do you see the industry going in regards to chassis in the next 3, 4, 5 years or beyond?
I hope it goes the way of Europe or Asia, where the truckers have the chassis.
Do you see that? I mean, you hope that, do you see that happening? Do you really genuinely think that can happen in North America?
It's tough.
Are you seeing trends that it will?
You're starting to see it with the larger trucking providers. They want to control their own destiny and invest in the private fleets of chassis. It's tougher for some of the other smaller players that may not have the capital to invest in that type of equipment.
So it may be a competitive advantage then.
It is.
Yeah. It will become a competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think whether you're an importer or an exporter, just asking that question, do you have private chassis and can it be utilized for my business, will be a key question.
But Ken, correct? I'm going to say something here. I don't think it's going to be too controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. Going back to what you said before about the drayage companies, yourselves included, in getting kind of beat up on the rates and stuff like that, right? Chassis are a cost. And it took forever for importers and exporters to get their minds wrapped around that chassis is a cost, because they had been given it for free for so long.
Right.
And so it is a cost. If you have your own private chassis fleet, it is a cost that you guys have. And so customers need to also accommodate for that in their pricing. And so I just say, from a drayage rate perspective, got to open up, got to start thinking about that from a chassis rate perspective. You got to look at that as well. So it's a cost of moving that container wherever you're going.
That is true. I think those companies that make an investment and realize it's a cost of doing business are those that will control their destiny. Those who are relying on a pool, that's tough, because you're not being efficient as much as possible in terms of time, right? Yep. If in LA Long, I'll throw this out as an example. Specialized chassis, triaxles, for example.
Yep.
Or even sometimes 45s. none of the marine terminals have those chassis on site.
Right.
And a lot of the marine terminals are completely kicking chassis off of their facilities anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking for a triaxle or a 45 and you're relying on a pool chassis, you sometimes have to go to a rail facility, which is 20 miles outside of the port complex, to pick up a specific type of chassis, triaxle or 45. So now you've lost 2 hours in your driver's time to go pick up this chassis because it has to be a pool chassis.
Yeah.
You're not being efficient. And if you had these types of chassis, then it makes it much more efficient on your driver. That driver can do more turns and you can get more cargo, and that driver can make more money.
Yeah.
So Ken, in the context of, this topic, exports and drayage, what are the competitive advantages that IMC Logistics can help BCOs compete?
The biggest advantage is that for scale of our import customers, specifically on the West Coast, we have a lot of import customers that are in areas in which we could do a street turn. The Central Valley of California, I mean, that is a breadbasket of the world. It really is. And approaching a export customer in that area and telling them, we've got all these import containers. It's essentially, we can give you a better deal than picking up from the marine terminal. Let's talk. And so knowing that your trucking company has two types of business, both import and export, it can help. It really does help. Just knowing your trucker has those empties available and saying, hey, yes, I can use them for an export load. I think most trucking companies will jump at that opportunity to have another revenue generator.
So, all right. So Ken, I met you, I think, when you were at the Port of Long Beach. You spent over 15 years, I think, there. What's one thing that most people don't realize about port operations that would help them work more effectively with them?
I think most businesses forget about the political side. And I don't blame them. One of the things that I was always told, which makes me laugh to this day, the 9 most feared words: I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Ronald Reagan, state of California.
Yep.
But flipping that around, most port authorities want to hear from their customers. They want to know who the importer is and who the exporter is, because they want to make sure that they continue to be the gateway of choice for the cargo coming in or going out. Even if you're on the East Coast, try to, as much as possible, to establish a relationship with the representative of the port and get to know them. And I guarantee you, every port authority person that I know wants to know who the true customer is, whether it's an exporter or importer. They want that person. So develop those relationships with the port authorities, and they can help you navigate the complexities of the port.
That's good. Good advice.
It's great advice.
So speaking of advice, what kind of advice would you give the next generation of logistics professionals, somebody who's entering the logistics field or just interested in exports or port logistics? What advice would you give them?
No job is too small. No job. If someone offers you an opportunity to go somewhere else, try it. If they say, hey, we want you to go to Boise, Idaho, Los Angeles or Secaucus, New Jersey, and you're single, try it. If you don't have an obligation at
If
home,
you're married, don't try it, right? If you're single, try it.
Well, you might
Well-
want to have a conversation. I still say you need to think about it and try it. So
yeah, it doesn't hurt to experience other communities around the U.S. or around the world. It will really open up your eyes and give you that experience of knowing operations not only in your local vicinity but across the nation. And I think that's what's really needed is, continue to expand your knowledge, and some of that is just by, hey, you got to travel and sometimes, and you got to move around.
yeah, that's great
But
advice.
saying that, I'm going to move back to Idaho.
So what's one of the best things that you like about working in logistics?
Every day is different.
Right?
Every day is different, and the time just flies by. I think working back on the private side, what I really like to see is that now I can offer a definite solution. If you're looking for trucking from a specific point, or if you're looking for, hey, I have policies in my company that want me to be green, I can offer that. And that's a really cool feeling, that saying, hey, I've got 50 hydrogen trucks or 6 battery electrics, and we can help clean up the world if we partner up together. That's cool to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
All right, let's kind of wrap it up a little bit if we can. But before we do, we always like to, we like to talk about food, Ken. So we would love to hear like your best restaurant story of all the travels that you've had, or best meal or restaurant in all your travels. Or if you're a cook, what's your favorite? Yeah, tell us that story, the one that just popped in your head.
The worst story. I'll start with the worst story.
Oh, okay.
I was in Shanghai, and it's gotten obviously a lot better since then, but I think I had a bad case of food poisoning.
Yeah.
And just be aware of where you're at and make sure everything is clean as possible. But I'll get off that subject really quick.
I said best meal.
Best
Ken.
meal. Hey, I'll tell you what, I've had some good meals in Arkansas before. Surprisingly, if you go there and you're like, where am I going to eat in Bentonville? And there's some really cool places, some barbecue joints of all places.
Right.
I think still to this day, I do prefer Texas barbecue over Memphis barbecue.
Okay.
And even over Kansas City barbecue.
Okay.
Get that good brisket down in Texas.
Yes. Yeah.
I love
Can't
that.
beat it.
Yeah. So let's pick on Long Beach for a second. You're in Long Beach. Where you want to go eat?
Yeah.
The 555 never disappoints.
Never
in terms
fails.
of a good steak.
Good choice.
That's probably the landmark for people in our industry, that people go there and talk, and you have to be careful because you never know who's behind you that could be listening in.
That's very true.
That's a famous spot for our people in our industry, is the 555, the triple kettle.
It depends on what kind of meeting you want to have. If you're going to have a meeting where you don't want a lot of listeners, but you're right, you have to look around on who's around you from the industry.
Yeah, if you want to go offsite, Nico's in Naples, part of Long Beach, is very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nico's is great.
A lot of breakfast joints in Long Beach. If you diners, dives, and drive-thrus, a lot of places have been featured on those shows, and some really good burger restaurants. And of course, if you like Mexican food, you can't beat Southern California for the variety of Mexican food.
Yeah. You go to for breakfast, you go down to Chuck's, close to Belmont Shore.
Wild Weasel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knows what I'm talking about.
It's within 3 blocks away from where I live.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I used to go ride my bike down to Chuck's when I was living in Long Beach. I ride down there on Saturday and have breakfast.
Yeah, it's still very popular. You still see a lot of people hanging out through there, and it's one of the popular breakfast joints in Long Beach.
That's awesome.
Well, Ken, this has been really, really good. I want to make sure that the audience and listeners know how to reach you, the best way to reach you if they need to. Obviously, they can go to imcc.com, but how do they reach you?
My cell phone is 562-572-5691. My email, KURIU@imcc.com.
Wonderful. That's great. Well, thanks, Ken. Thanks for taking the time to take us inside the world of exports and street turns and everything in between. You've worked across public agencies, ocean carriers, and now an asset-based powerhouse like IMC Logistics. And that depth of experience really came through today. So what I really appreciate most is that you don't just talk strategy, you make it real. So whether it's breaking down the complexities of street turns or how export flows are actually managed on the ground, calling out operational friction points, these conversations have been, full of insight that I know our listeners can put to use immediately. So everyone tuning in, if you want to follow Ken's work and the latest from IMC Logistics, head over to imcc.com or check them out on LinkedIn. And a big thanks to IMC Logistics for sponsoring today's episode and for the work they're doing every day to make export logistics more efficient, more transparent, and more collaborative from port to door. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ken.
Appreciate you, Ken.
Thank you very much, guys. Really enjoyed it.
All right, thanks, man.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. If today's discussion inspired you, don't forget to follow, subscribe, rate, and share our podcast.
Remember, every great journey in logistics starts with a single step forward. Let's continue working together to transform the industry.